Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? The men leaned forward, elbows heavy on steel. Their voices clashed, sharp and fast, filling the air like the rattle of distant gunfire. Maps sprawled under red light, arrows and circles drawn thick, their markers squealing against plastic sheets. Decisions were being made. A mission was being carved into reality. But she sat at the edge, silent, waiting. Her hands, folded on her lap, were steady. Her gaze never broke from the board. She had trained herself long ago to breathe slow, to keep her pulse hidden, to never give them the satisfaction of seeing impatience. Still, the weight of being unseen pressed down on her. She was the only woman in the room, the only one not jostling for position, not fighting to be heard. They talked over each other, over the commander, over themselves, but never over her. She wasn't in the circle. She was outside of it. And yet, the decision would bend to her. Not because they respected her, not because they asked, but because when it mattered, when it all came down to a single choice, they would turn. They always did. The commander's fist hit the table. Silence broke through the noise. Enough. His voice was gravel. He rubbed his temples, exhaled hard. We'll run Delta approach. No arguments. But there were arguments thick in the air, unsaid but seething. She saw it in their eyes, the twitch of jaw muscles, the clenched knuckles. Men who had lost too many and didn't want to lose more. One of them, young, raw, caught her eye across the table. He shook his head, a barely there movement. Don't let it happen, his eyes said. Don't let him do this. But she didn't move. Not yet. Because there was something she hadn't told them. Not the commander, not the men, not even the young one who looked at her like she carried the only light left in this place. She carried a secret, and secrets had weight. The briefing ended in frustration. Chairs scraped. Boots thudded across concrete as they dispersed into smaller knots, voices dropping low, muttering curses, chewing over what they couldn't change. She stayed seated. The commander gathered his papers, shoved them into his folder with rough hands, then looked at her for the first time that night. You have something to say, don't you? Her throat tightened, but her face stayed calm. Not yet, sir. He studied her. She met his gaze without flinching. A long pause stretched between them, heavy, silent, electric. Then he nodded once, short and sharp, and walked out. When the door slammed, she finally exhaled. Her lungs ached. Outside, the base was alive with restless energy. Generators hummed. Radios crackled with static and clipped orders. Distant engines roared as convoys prepped for departure. The night smelled of diesel, iron, and sand. She stepped into it quietly, boots crunching gravel, the desert air cool against her skin. Somewhere beyond those walls was the target. A valley where shadows moved with rifles, where someone waited who thought themselves untouchable. The mission was to breach, clear, and extract. Simple words, not a simple reality. She walked toward the barracks, but her feet slowed as voices drifted from inside, laughter, strained but real, echoing from men who had learned to steal fragments of joy in the hours before a mission. She paused at the doorway, unseen, listening. One was telling a story about a girl back home, his words soft, almost embarrassed. Another joked about the food, how he'd trade his rifle for a proper meal. Someone cursed about a broken boot sole. Human sounds, fragile and raw, clinging to life in a place built for death. Her chest tightened again. She stepped away before they noticed her. In her bunk, she sat in darkness, hands resting on the rifle across her knees. Fingers traced the worn grip, each scratch a memory. She had carried it longer than she had carried friendships, longer than she had carried trust. And yet it was not the rifle that haunted her. It was a name, one that never left her thoughts, a name etched into her chest so deep it throbbed even now. She had come here for the mission, yes, but beneath the orders, beneath the maps and briefings, there was something more. This valley, this target, it tied back to that name, to a night she still woke from with her heart racing and her body cold. She closed her eyes, saw the face again, heard the voice, felt the silence that followed, and knew she couldn't let Delta approach happen. Sleep was impossible. She lay down, but the ceiling pressed down like stone, the hum of the bass filling her ears until dawn scraped its pale light over the desert horizon. When the alarm finally sounded, she was already awake. They moved out with the morning. Convoys kicked up plumes of dust, sunlight cutting through like blades. The men were loud again, trading barbs, their nerves masked by noise. She rode in silence. The young one sat across from her, his rifle across his lap. He watched her, not speaking, just watching. He wanted answers. She could see it in the way his brow furrowed, the way his leg bounced with restless energy. But she gave him nothing, not yet. Engines slowed, radios crackled, the valley spread out before them, wide, jagged, silent. Shadows shifted in the rocks and the world held its breath. They dismounted, boots hit dirt, weapons raised, the air smelled of dust and tension. The commander gave quick hand signals, splitting them into groups. Delta approach. The path they had argued about. The path that would walk them into the jaws of an enemy waiting with patience and steel. Her chest tightened again. But she said nothing, she followed. Because timing mattered, and if she spoke too soon they would dismiss her. They always did. The path narrowed. Silence grew heavy. Every rock, every shadow seemed to breathe. Her senses sharpened, skin prickling, heart thudding slow and deep. Then movement. A flash on the ridge, sun glinting off glass. Her hand shot up, silent signal. The squad froze, eyes darting, weapons aimed. The commander glared back at her, his jaw tight, but he held the line. A long second passed, another. Then a crack split the air, dust exploded near their feet, sniper. Chaos erupted. Men dove for cover, curses tearing the silence. Bullets rained down from the ridges, shredding stone, sending shards flying. The valley became a cage, sound bouncing off walls, deafening. And in the middle of it she moved. Not reckless, not desperate, precise. She slid into cover, her rifle snapping up. Through the scope the world narrowed to one ridge, one shadow, one glint of glass. Her breath slowed, her fingers steadied. And the shot landed. Silence broke through the noise, a sudden hollow silence as the sniper dropped. The others faltered, their fire stuttering. The commander barked orders, men surged forward. But she stayed back, scope sweeping, eyes sharp. She knew this wasn't over, this was just the first test. The valley was deeper than they thought, and so was her secret. As they pushed ahead, she rose, dust clinging to her gear, rifle heavy in her hands. The young one caught her eye again, his chest heaving, his face pale. "You knew," he mouthed. She gave the smallest nod. Because yes, she knew, and there was more she hadn't told them. Not yet. She should have spoken sooner. That thought pressed against her chest as they advanced deeper into the valley, each step grinding dust beneath their boots. The silence between bursts of gunfire was worse than the chaos. Every pause felt like a heartbeat skipped, like the world was holding its breath before it struck again. The commander pushed them hard, his hands signals sharp, impatient. He wanted speed. He wanted to push through the choke point before the enemy regrouped. But speed was a lie here, she knew it. The young one, Torres, his name, stayed close. His eyes flicked to her with every turn as if tethered. He had caught that single nod. He understood enough to be afraid. The others didn't see it, didn't want to. They trusted momentum more than shadows. But she had lived in shadows before. Her breath grew heavier, not from the weight of gear, not from the heat, but from memory. The valley smelled the same as that other place years ago. Dry stone, scorched dust, gun oil. It pulled her back whether she wanted it or not. Back to the night the name was carved into her. She saw the flash again, heard the scream, felt the warm spray of blood on her cheek. A teammate closer than a brother, cut down by arrogance, by rushing, by believing the map more than instinct. She had been the one who pulled him back, who tried to hold the life inside him with shaking hands. She had whispered his name until her voice broke, but names don't stop bleeding. And when his eyes went dim, she promised herself she'd never let it happen again. Never. Her jaw tightened. That was the secret. The reason Delta approach was poison. She had seen this before. The terrain different, the enemy different, but the trap was the same. She wanted to scream it now, wanted to drag the commander by his collar and force him to listen. But then what? Another argument, another dismissal, another glance that said she was out of place, out of line. They didn't want her voice. They only wanted her silence when it served them. So she waited. The valley bent sharply, the walls rising higher, closing in. A place where sound bounced in strange ways, where echoes could hide the truth. And then faint, almost invisible, the whisper of metal sliding on stone. Her hand shot up again. Stop. The squad froze, eyes darted, fingers tightened on triggers. The commander glared at her, fury hot in his stare, but he held. She dropped to one knee, scanning the ridges. Nothing, only stone, shadow, heat waves. But her gut screamed. She turned to Torres, her voice low, steady. Do you hear it? He swallowed hard, nodded. Yeah, not wind. The commander hissed sharp. We move now. Her eyes cut to him. It's an ambush. He stepped closer, towering, jaw flexing. Everything's an ambush in your head. Her breath steadied, but inside she trembled. Because he wasn't wrong, she had been here before. Haunted by shadows, hunted by ghosts. But this time it wasn't just ghosts. And then the world erupted. Grenades slammed into the dirt, throwing up fire and dust. The ridges came alive with muzzle flashes, a wall of bullets raining down. The squad dove, scattered, shouting. She hit the ground hard, grit biting into her cheek, her rifle clenched in white-knuckled fists. Her ears rang, heart thundered, but her body moved without thought, crawl, roll, sight, fire. Torres was beside her, firing blind, fear etched in his face. The commander roared orders through the chaos, his voice swallowed by explosions. And still, beneath it all, she thought of that promise, that name, that night. She wouldn't let it happen again. Her scope caught movement, 3 figures descending the ridge, closing fast. Her finger squeezed once, twice, 3 times. They dropped, rolling back into dust. The squad regrouped, pressing against the valley wall. Bullets chewed the stone inches from their heads. Shards rained down like glass. She pulled the radio, voice low but sharp. We're pinned, need smoke, now. No answer, static only. She tried again. Base, this is Unit 9, do you copy? Nothing. The commander snatched the radio from her. You broke comms. Her jaw locked. No, they're jamming. He swore, teeth bared. For a moment, his fury wasn't at her. It was at the realization he had walked them straight into this. But he wouldn't admit it, not yet. Smoke popped, finally, Torres throwing grenades to cover their push. Gray clouds swelled, swallowing sight lines. Move, the commander barked. They surged forward under cover, weaving through jagged stone. Bullets still cracked, but Wilder now less certain. Her chest burned. Every step felt heavier, not from fear, though fear lived in her bones, but from the weight of choice. She could stay silent, follow orders, let the valley bleed them dry. Or she could speak, and risk being the outcast again, the liability, the one who never let things go. But then Torres stumbled. A bullet grazed his arm, spinning him to the ground with a cry. She grabbed him, dragged him behind cover. Blood seeped through his sleeve, hot against her fingers. His eyes locked on hers, wide, pleading. You knew, he whispered, his voice cracked. You knew this would happen. Her throat closed. She pressed her hand hard against his wound, stopping the flow. I did. The words felt like breaking glass inside her. He breathed ragged, nodding. Then stop it, whatever you're hiding, stop it. Her chest shook. Dust clung to her lips, her lashes, her skin. The battle roared around them, but here, in this small corner of stone and blood, the choice was hers. She closed her eyes only for a heartbeat, saw the name again, heard the silence, and opened them with fire. She stood. Bullets whipped past, shouts echoed. She didn't care. She looked straight at the commander, her voice sharp, cutting through chaos. This valley's a kill box. Delta approach is suicide. They're waiting in layers, ridges, trenches, crossfire. I've seen this before. I lost someone here. I'm not losing them again. The commander froze. His eyes burned into hers, furious, incredulous. But behind him the men stared too. Their faces pale, sweat and dust streaked, fear raw, and in their eyes she saw something else. Hope. The commander's jaw worked, his hands shook. For the first time he looked unsure. And in that hesitation the war bent. Because she had spoken. Not nodded, not waited, spoken. Silence stretched, heavy, broken only by the crack of distant rifles. Then he nodded once, short and sharp. "I'll write your call." The squad shifted, eyes snapping to her, waiting, trusting. Her pulse thundered, breath caught, but her voice was steady. "Cut left, into the ravine, we move quiet, we move now." The men obeyed without question. As they shifted, Torres leaned on her shoulder, his face pale, blood soaking his sleeve. He whispered, weak but firm, "Took you long enough." Her lips twitched, almost a smile, almost. But the weight hadn't lifted. If anything, it grew heavier, because now the war wasn't just bending to her choice. It was bending to her promise. And promises had a price. How many lives could a single decision carry? The question dug into her as the squad slipped into the ravine, their boots muffled against loose stone, their breath shallow, afraid even of sound. The world above still crackled with fire, but the smoke they'd left behind cloaked their movement. Every step forward was a gamble. Every choice she made now wrote itself onto their survival. Torres leaned on her, his weight heavy, his arm bleeding through the bandage she had tied in haste. He tried to hide the pain, jaw clenched, eyes sharp, but she felt every tremor through him. He was too young for this, too young to have looked at her like she was the only thing holding him upright. And yet wasn't she? The ravine narrowed, walls pressing close. The men followed in a staggered line, their gear scraping stone, their rifles held high. The commander brought up the rear. His silence was louder than any argument. He had given her control, for now. But she knew what that meant. If she was right, he'd never forgive her for showing him weak in front of his men. And if she was wrong, they wouldn't live to remember it. Her fingers brushed the wall as she moved, feeling the cool grit. She forced herself to breathe steady to keep her thoughts from spiraling. Instinct said this path was safer, but instinct could lie. Memories could twist into illusions. What if she was leading them into another trap? Her chest tightened. She almost stumbled under Tor's weight. The promise she had made that night, not to lose anyone else, pressed like a blade at her ribs. But promises don't stop bullets. She shook it off, focus, one step at a time. A sound drifted through the air, faint, almost hidden. Not gunfire, not footsteps, something stranger. A low hum, mechanical, steady. Her stomach dropped. "Drones," she whispered. The men froze, eyes widened. The commander hissed, "You said this way was clear." Her jaw tightened. "I said it wasn't a kill box, doesn't mean it's clean." Above them, a shadow moved across the narrow strip of sky. A small drone, its rotors whispering, sensors scanning. If it saw them, the whole valley would light up. Her pulse spiked. She pulled Torres tighter against the wall, pressing him into shadow. The others followed, flattening themselves, holding breath like prayer. The drone hovered, tilted, drifted slowly past. Every second stretched. Sweat dripped from her temple. Then it moved on, vanishing beyond the bend. Silence. They exhaled as one. One of the men muttered, voice shaking, "How the hell do they have drones here?" No one answered, because they all knew the truth. This wasn't just a local ambush. Someone bigger was feeding the enemy. Her chest grew heavy again. The deeper truth itched at her throat, the one she hadn't spoken even now. That this mission wasn't just tactical for her, it was personal. The man she had lost, he had died in a valley like this, but not just because of bad luck. Because someone had sold them out. She hadn't told anyone, she hadn't dared. The intel was thin, a whisper caught on comms years ago, but in her gut she knew. And here now the pieces clicked. The drones, the ambush, the terrain chosen so precisely. This wasn't chance. This was the same pattern. Her blood ran cold. If she was right, they weren't fighting just to complete a mission. They were fighting to survive betrayal. The ravine widened suddenly, spilling into an open hollow. The men hesitated, eyes darting to her, waiting for her signal. She scanned quickly, rocks stacked unnaturally, shallow trenches cut into the earth. Her stomach sank deeper. "Defensive setup," she murmured. The commander growled, "Then we push through before they regroup." She turned sharp. "That's exactly what they want." His face hardened. "And what do you want? Sit here and wait until they find us." Her breath caught. The men stared, caught between orders. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat, heard the name again, saw the blood. No, not again. Her eyes opened fierce. "We don't push forward, we pull them out. Draw them where we choose, not where they've set the board." The commander's jaw flexed. Rage burned in his stare. But again he hesitated. And the men leaned toward her. Torres, pale but steady, whispered, "She's right." The commander heard it, saw the nods from the others. And that was it, his command slipping thread by thread. He spat to the side, voice low, venomous. "Then it's your war now." She didn't flinch, didn't look away. Because it had been her war from the start. They set traps quick. Mines pulled from packs, tripwires strung across narrow passes, grenades wired to stones. Every motion was quiet, efficient, hands steady despite the fear that clung to their skin. The waiting was worse, time stretched, heartbeats loud. She crouched in shadow, rifle pressed to her shoulder, eyes locked on the approach. Torres sat beside her, pale but refusing to rest. He broke the silence, voice low. "The one you lost, was it family?" Her throat tightened. She kept her eyes on the rocks, but her voice slipped through, quiet, raw. "Closer." Torres nodded slowly, his face unreadable. But his hand brushed hers just once. Not romantic, not desperate, human. She let it linger for a second. Then she pulled away, steadying her grip on the rifle. The hum came again, louder this time, more drones. And with them footsteps, dozens, maybe more. Her breath slowed, her finger tightened. The first figure appeared at the bend, then another, shadows spilling into the hollow like water breaking a dam. She whispered into the radio, barely a breath, "Now." The mines lit the earth. Explosions thundered, fire and dust ripping through the first wave. Shouts echoed, chaos crashing back at them. The squad opened fire, bullets cutting through smoke and screams. The ambush had turned. The hunters had become the hunted. She moved with precision, every shot measured, every breath steady. Her world narrowed to sight and trigger, sound and silence. But beneath it all, her chest still ached. Because every burst of fire, every scream, every fall reminded her this wasn't victory. This was survival. And survival always took pieces of you. When the dust finally settled, silence crept back. The hollow was littered with bodies, smoke curling into the sky. The men exhaled, shoulders slumping, eyes wide with the shock of still being alive. But she didn't relax. Her gaze swept the ridges, the trenches. Too easy, too contained. This wasn't over. The commander approached, his face hard, unreadable. For a moment she thought he would spit fury again. Instead he leaned close, his voice low. You wanted this war, then you finish it, because if you're wrong again, it's on your soul. Her jaw clenched. She met his eyes without flinching. It already is. And she knew then, he still didn't understand. This wasn't about being right. It was about keeping a promise carved into her bones. Even if it destroyed her. What if the real enemy wasn't the one shooting at you? The question stuck in her throat as the smoke cleared, the air heavy with gunpowder and burnt sand. The hollow reeked of death. Men shifted among the fallen, checking weapons, breathing ragged, eyes darting like they couldn't quite believe they were still standing. Survival never felt like triumph, not to her. She scanned the ridges, rifle tight against her shoulder. No more shadows moved. No more gunfire cracked. The world was still, too still. The commander barked for ammo counts, his voice harsh, brittle. His jaw was set, but his eyes betrayed something else, something he'd never admit: doubt. He caught her watching. His glare was sharp enough to cut. "Don't get smug," he hissed. "One good guess doesn't make you right." She didn't answer. She had no energy for pride, not here. Instead, she moved to Torres. He sat against a rock, his face pale, his sleeves soaked with blood. But when she crouched beside him, his lips quirked into a thin, stubborn grin. "Still alive," he whispered. Her chest tightened. She pressed her hand over his bandage, checking the bleeding. "Barely." He shrugged weakly. "Barely counts." The words stabbed at her, because she'd heard them before from someone else. A laugh strained and wet with blood. "Barely counts." And then silence. Her breath stuttered, but she steadied it. She wouldn't let Torres fade, not him. She met his eyes. "You hold on, that's an order." His grin softened. "Yes, ma'am." The commander's voice cut across the hollow. "We move in 10. She snapped her head toward him. "He can't." The commander strode closer, boots crunching over stone and ash. His shadow fell over them, his face hard, impatient. "He doesn't have a choice. None of us do. We sit here, more of them come." Her pulse quickened. Fury flared hot in her chest. She rose, squaring to him, dust and blood clinging to her skin. "You walked us into their kill zone. You nearly got us wiped out. And now you want to march wounded into another trap." The commander's jaw flexed, his fists tight at his sides. For a moment she thought he'd swing at her. His eyes burned with more than anger, humiliation. The men nearby froze, watching. Their trust hung in the air, fragile, waiting to fall one way or another. The commander leaned in close, his voice low, venomous. "Don't think one shot, one call makes you the soul of this unit. You've always been dead weight. Everyone knows it." Her chest trembled, but not from fear, from restraint. She could feel Tor's eyes on her, could feel the men's silence heavy around them. If she lashed back now, if she let her anger speak, the squad would fracture. And in a valley filled with enemies and betrayal, division was a death sentence. So she did what she had always done. She swallowed it. Her voice, when it came, was calm, flat. "Then let me carry the weight." The commander froze. His glare faltered just for a second. She crouched, slid Tor's arm over her shoulder, lifted him to his feet. The boy winced, teeth gritted, but she bore his weight without complaint. Her knees screamed, her back ached, but she stood tall, his body pressed against hers, steady. She looked the commander in the eye. "You keep them moving, I'll keep him alive." For the first time, he didn't answer. He just turned sharply, snapping orders at the others, refusing to look at her again. The squad moved out, slower now, every step dragging with exhaustion. The sun hung high, pouring heat down the valley walls. Sweat stung their eyes, turned dust to mud on their faces. Every few steps, Torres leaned heavier. Every few steps, she felt her strength slipping, her muscles screaming under the strain. But she didn't stop, couldn't stop. Because every ounce of pain was better than the guilt of another name carved into her chest. The ravine twisted, narrowed, then opened again into a wide basin. The men slowed, uneasy. The commander raised a fist, halting them. The basin was wrong, too open, too quiet. Shadows stretched long across the ground, and at the far edge movement, not enemy fighters, not drones. Figures. Civilian. Women, children, old men. Their clothes dusty, their faces drawn, eyes sunken. They stood in silence, staring, not running, not shouting, just staring. A chill ran down her spine. The commander's voice was low, wary. "What the hell is this?" One of the men muttered, "Bait." Her stomach clenched, because he was right. Civilians didn't stand in the open like this, not unless someone made them. She stepped forward, her voice sharp. "We don't fire, not unless they do." The commander shot her a glare, but even he didn't argue. Not yet. The civilians didn't move, didn't speak, only watched. And then a boy, no older than 10, lifted his hand. Her breath caught, because in it, clutched tight, was a radio. Static crackled. The basin exploded. Gunfire erupted from the ridges, bullets tearing into dirt and stone. Civilians scattered, screaming, some falling as rounds ripped through. The squad dove, shouting, firing back blind. Dust and smoke swallowed the basin. She dragged Torres behind a boulder, her heart slamming, her ears ringing. The betrayal was complete now. Civilians as cover, radios as triggers. Her throat burned. How many times could she watch innocence used as a weapon before she broke? Torres gripped her sleeve, his eyes wide, desperate. "Tell me this isn't like before. Tell me we're not dying here." Her chest shook. She wanted to lie, wanted to give him something to hold. But she couldn't. So she pressed her forehead against his for one brief second, a silent promise. "Not this time." She rose, rifle tight, eyes scanning the chaos. The enemy was hidden, entrenched, their fire precise, but patterns revealed themselves if you looked hard enough. Her breath slowed, sight breath trigger. One shot cracked, a ridge went silent, another. The squad rallied, moving under her cover, finding new angles, pushing back against the tide. But the civilians, their screams didn't stop. Some lay still in the dust. Some ran, terrified, clutching children, dragging the wounded. Her stomach twisted, her vision blurred. Because war wasn't just bullets and blood, it was this. Innocence shattered, used like sandbags and bait. And every face she saw would stay with her. The commander barked for them to press, to clear the basin. His voice was a whip, driving them forward. But she stayed still, her rifle trembling. Because for the first time since she picked it up, she wasn't sure she could pull the trigger again. Not with so many innocent eyes burned into hers. Not with her soul, already heavy with promises she couldn't keep. The battle roared on, the squad fought, the basin shook. And she stood there, caught between duty and humanity, between the war outside and the war inside. One question pounded louder than all the rest. If she chose wrong again, how many more lives would it cost? The firefight raged, but inside her something cracked. She had always known war chewed men alive. But now, watching women and children used as pawns, hearing their screams blend with gunfire, she realized something darker. This war didn't want soldiers, it wanted monsters. And she wasn't sure which one she was becoming. Torres' weak voice yanked her back. We gotta move." She turned, saw him slumped against the boulder, face gray, blood still seeping. His hand trembled as it clutched his rifle, more out of pride than strength. Her chest ached. He still believed they could get out, still believed she could lead him there. But her rifle shook in her hands. Not from fear of dying, she had long ago accepted that. No, it shook because she feared killing the wrong person again. Firing into the smoke, into the chaos, and living the rest of her life with the echo of another innocent scream. The commander's voice tore through the haze. "Advance, push them back." She looked up. The squad staggered forward, driven by habit, by orders, by the simple fact that stopping meant dying. Their movements were desperate, their faces smeared with dirt and rage. And in the middle of them, the commander, his rifle blazing, his roar drowning out reason. But the shots he barked didn't scare her anymore. What scared her was the emptiness in his eyes. He wasn't leading men, he was feeding them into the fire. Her stomach twisted. How many times had this happened before? How many men had he thrown away, calling it necessity, calling it war? And how many times had she stood silent, letting his authority mask his recklessness? Not this time. She set Torres' rifle aside and gripped her own tighter. Her breath steadied, her vision narrowed. Not into the smoke, not into the screams. She aimed high at the ridges, at the cracks in the rock where the enemy muzzle flashes sparked. She read the pattern, the rhythm, the distance. One breath, one shot. The ridge went silent. Another breath, another shot. A figure tumbled, the fire thinned. Her squad noticed. Their heads jerked, their pace slowed. For a moment they didn't follow the commander, they followed her sights. The basin shifted. And that shift was everything. The commander noticed too. He spun, fury carving lines into his face. His roar cut through the gunfire. "Who gave you command?" Her eyes didn't leave her target. Another squeeze of the trigger, another enemy silenced. Her reply was steady, cold. "No one, and that's the problem." The squad froze. Bullets still cracked overhead, but suddenly the louder war was the one between them. The commander stormed closer, teeth bared, veins bulging. "You think you're saving them. You're making them hesitate. You're costing lives." She finally turned, eyes locking onto his. And for the first time, she didn't see a superior officer. She saw a man who would drag them all into a grave rather than admit he'd been wrong. Her voice trembled with fury. "You cost us lives when you let us blind. You cost us when you ignored the signs. And you'll cost us again if we keep following you." The words were fire, and in the silence that followed she felt them land. The men looked between them, breathless, unsure, waiting. The commander's face twisted. He raised his rifle not at the enemy, at her. Her breath caught. The squad gasped. And in that single heartbeat, everything slowed. This was it. Not bullets, not ambushes, not betrayal from the outside. The real enemy had always been inside. Her finger tightened on her trigger, but not at him, not yet. She whispered, barely audible, but every man around her heard it. "Don't make me prove it." The air was a blade's edge. One wrong move and it would all break. Then Torres' voice cut through, hoarse, raw. "She's right." The boy's whisper carried louder than a shout, because it wasn't just words, it was defiance, it was loyalty, it was faith. The squad's heads turned, their rifles lowered, their silence spoke. And the commander knew. For the first time, he wasn't the one they were following. His hand shook on his rifle, his breath came ragged. For a moment the mask slipped and she saw the fear underneath, not of the enemy, of losing control. His jaw clenched. He lowered his weapon, spitting words like venom. "Fine, lead them then, but their blood's on your hands." He turned, storming forward, firing blindly again. The men hesitated. Then one by one their eyes fell to her. And in that silence, heavy with choice, she felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders. She swallowed hard. Her voice was steady, but inside her heart pounded. Not their blood, not today. She lifted her rifle, sighted the ridge, and stepped forward. The squad followed. Not because of rank, not because of orders. Because she gave them something the commander never had. A reason to believe survival didn't have to mean becoming monsters. The battle burned on. The enemy fire sputtered, cracked, fell silent. Civilians fled into the distance, broken and terrified but alive. And when the smoke thinned, when the ridges quieted, the squad still stood. Barely, but barely counted. She turned, scanning faces, counting heads. Too many wounded, too many broken, but alive. Her eyes found Torres. He leaned heavy against a rock, his grin faint but there. "Told you," he rasped, "barely counts." Her chest tightened. A laugh broke through her tears. For the first time in what felt like years, she let herself breathe. But the commander, he stood apart. His eyes burned holes into her, not admiration, not relief. Hatred. The kind that promised this battle wasn't over, not between them. And as the squad regrouped, as the basin fell quiet, she realized something far more dangerous than any ambush had just begun. She had taken his command, and he would rather see her dead than live in her shadow. The silence after the battle was louder than the gunfire. They moved through the canyon single file, boots crunching on gravel, shadows stretching long under a sky that refused to care. Smoke still clung to their clothes, and the smell of cordite mixed with the faint sweetness of blood. No one spoke, not even Torres, who leaned on her shoulder with each painful step. His breaths were shallow, his lips cracked, his weight heavier by the minute. Every now and then she felt his hand twitch, as if reaching for the rifle he no longer had strength to carry. Pride, even in the edge of collapse. She didn't let him fall, not yet. Ahead, the commander walked with a stiffness that wasn't exhaustion. His shoulders were rigid, his rifle clutched tight though no enemy had shown for miles. Every step radiated fury. The squad felt it too. They gave him space, not out of respect anymore but fear. The kind of fear that had nothing to do with bullets. Her throat was dry. She knew what they all felt. The enemy wasn't just behind them anymore. He was in front of them, leading them straight into a place none of them trusted. And the worst part, they couldn't break away. Not yet. Splitting meant death. Splitting meant turning the canyon walls into graves. So she walked, eyes sharp, ears tuned to the crunch of every footstep, heart heavy with the knowledge that one of those steps could end with betrayal. Torres whispered, barely audible, "He's not gonna let this go." She glanced down. His eyes were half shut, his face pale, but his words carried weight. "I know," she whispered back. And she did. She had seen it in the commander's stare. The hatred wasn't momentary, it was a wound. And men like him didn't leave wounds to heal. They cut deeper until someone bled out. Her chest tightened. The squad was watching her. Even in silence, she felt it. The subtle glances, the hesitations when the commander barked an order, the way their boots fell in rhythm with hers rather than his. They had chosen. But choice had consequences. Her father's voice echoed faintly in her memory. "You don't steal command. You inherit it in blood." She didn't want command. Not like this. Not bought with defiance and fear. But the canyon didn't care what she wanted. The squad didn't care either. They only cared about who would get them out alive. And deep inside, under the weight of exhaustion, she knew the truth. If she wanted to save them, she'd have to survive him first. The canyon narrowed, shadows deepened. The commander raised a fist, signaling a halt. The men crouched, rifles ready. She scanned the ridges, ears straining for the telltale echo of a shot. Nothing, just the scrape of boots, the sigh of wind. The commander's head turned, eyes locking on her. His face was stone, but the rage underneath pulsed like heat. "Scout ahead," he ordered. It wasn't a suggestion. The squad stiffened. They all knew what that meant. Alone in the narrowing canyon, she'd be nothing but a silhouette against the rocks, an easy kill. Her stomach churned. She met his stare, saw the dare in his eyes. He wasn't sending her to keep them safe. He was sending her to erase a problem. Torres stirred weakly. His lips moved, whispering something only she caught. "Don't." Her throat burned. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to call him out here, to strip his authority once and for all. But she couldn't. Not yet. Not in front of them. Not with Torres half dead and the others barely standing. She nodded once, slow, steady. The commander smirked faintly. The squad looked away, ashamed. She stepped forward, rifle tight in her grip, senses wide open. Every rock seemed like a hiding place, every shadow a muzzle, her breath slowed, her boots soft against the gravel. She felt the canyon close around her, its walls like teeth. But there was no ambush, no hidden enemy, just silence. Until the crack of a rifle split the air. Stone burst inches from her head, dust stung her eyes. Her body dropped instantly, instincts sharper than thought. She rolled behind a jagged boulder, heart pounding, rifle sweeping. The shot had come from behind. Not the ridges. Behind. Her chest hollowed. She glanced back, eyes wide. The squad scrambled, confused, rifles jerking. The commander stood frozen, his barrel still smoking. The canyon air thickened. Every man saw it. Every man knew. The silence was unbearable. Her chest heaved, her rifle steadied. For a moment she considered it. One squeeze, end it here, save them the slow bleed of his vengeance. But her finger wouldn't move. Because killing him now wouldn't be survival, it would be execution. And once she crossed that line, there would be no way back. Instead she rose. Dust clung to her skin, her eyes never leaving his. "You missed," she said flatly. The words weren't accusation, they were fact. The squad held their breath. The commander's jaw clenched, his rifle lowered, his mask slid back into place, but it was cracked, jagged. "Move," he barked, turning sharply, leading forward as if nothing had happened. But the men hesitated. Their eyes lingered on her, on the dust on her face, on the truth they had all just witnessed. When they finally moved, they moved slower, not in his rhythm, in hers. Torres coughed, his voice rough but steady. He just showed his hand. She swallowed hard. Yeah. Her chest ached. She had won nothing, only delayed the inevitable. The canyon stretched ahead, endless and merciless. The squad dragged themselves through it, bound by necessity, broken by betrayal. And every step carried the same unspoken truth. The enemy wasn't only waiting in the ridges. The enemy walked among them. Why was he still leading? That question burned in every man's chest as they trudged deeper into the canyon. The commander marched ahead like nothing had happened, his back stiff, his rifle swinging carelessly at his side. But the silence behind him wasn't discipline anymore. It was distrust, heavy, suffocating. They all knew what they'd seen. The shot had been his. The dust still clung to her face, proof in every grain. And yet, no one said the words aloud. Because saying them meant admitting the truth. They weren't just caught in enemy territory. They were caught in a war inside their own ranks. Her boots dragged, not from exhaustion but from weight. The squad's weight, Torres' weight against her shoulder, and the commander's weight pressing from the front, daring her to break. Every step was a decision. Stay silent and he'd keep trying. Speak, and she risked shattering the only fragile thread keeping them together. The canyon walls echoed with their breaths, the scrape of gear, the groan of fatigue. She listened to it all like music, waiting for the sour note, the one that would mean the commander had finally decided to end this game. But he didn't, not yet. That patience scared her more than the bullet. Because a man who missed on purpose wasn't incompetent. He was waiting for the right moment. Her chest burned with memories she had fought to bury. Her father's voice, sharp and cutting. In war, silence kills more than bullets. Speak when it matters, or men will die with your words stuck in your throat. He had said it the night before he left, the night before his convoy never came back. She had been 13, too young to carry that lesson, too old to forget it. Now she felt it clawing inside her. She couldn't stay silent forever. But when a rockslide rattled in the distance, the squad froze, rifles lifting. Her heart pounded, enemy, or just the canyon groaning under its own weight. No movement followed, the silence returned. But the tension didn't fade. One of the younger soldiers, Alvarez, muttered under his breath, "Feels like this place wants us buried." No one corrected him, because maybe he was right. Hours dragged. The canyon narrowed, forcing them into tighter formation. Torres stumbled more often, his weight dragging heavier against her. She whispered to him, "Stay with me." His lips cracked into the faintest grin. "You'll carry me all the way home." Her throat tightened. She wanted to say yes, wanted to promise him more than survival, but promises were luxuries. So she gave him what she could. "I'll carry you until you don't need me to." His eyes softened. For a moment, he wasn't just another soldier. He was a boy who still believed in someone. That belief was heavier than his weight. The canyon bent, and they found what they feared most, a dead end. She stopped cold. The walls rose sheer and merciless, no crack to climb, no path to thread, just stone, tall and silent. The commander cursed under his breath. His jaw worked, grinding teeth against pride. She felt the squad's eyes shift to her, not openly, not yet, but enough that he noticed. His voice cut sharp. "We'll backtrack, there's another split." Backtrack, every man knew what that meant. More hours in the open, more time for ambush, more bleeding for Torres. Her chest heaved, her mind raced. She studied the wall, the jagged scars, the broken shale. It wasn't climbable for most, not with gear, not with wounds. But maybe for her. If she went up, maybe she could spot another path. Maybe she could find something the canyon was hiding. But going up meant exposing herself, again. Her palms itched. The commander smirked faintly, as if daring her to suggest it. She spoke anyway. "I'll climb, see what's ahead." The squad perked, a flicker of hope. The commander's voice was cold. "You won't make it." She met his eyes. "Then you'll have one less problem." The men glanced between them, the canyon suddenly smaller, tighter. She didn't wait for permission. She slung her rifle, found a crack in the stone, and started up. The wall tore at her hands, scraped her knees, pulled at her breath. The canyon below shrank, the men shrinking with it. Torres' pale face tilted up, eyes locked on her. Every inch was pain, every grip threatened to slip, but higher meant sight, higher meant choice. And choice was worth bleeding for. At the top, the world opened. The canyon forked, splitting into two veins. One was wide and easy, but the ridges bristled with places perfect for an ambush. The other was narrow, twisting, claustrophobic, but less exposed. Neither was safe. She closed her eyes, listening. The wind whispered through the stone. Her pulse thudded in her ears. Her father's voice echoed again. "You'll never choose the perfect path, only the one you're willing to bleed for." Her throat tightened. She knew the answer. She climbed down, each descent slower, heavier. When she reached the ground, the squad crowded, eyes burning with the question they hadn't voiced. She gave it to them straight. "Two paths, one kills us quick, one kills us slow." The commander snorted. "Then we take the quick, better than starving in a hole." The men shifted uncomfortably. She shook her head. "The narrow path gives us a chance, less exposure, we take it." The commander's eyes narrowed. "You're not in charge." The squad stiffened. Her chest ached, but she held his stare. "No, but I'm the only one willing to bleed for it." Silence heavy. Then Alvarez, the young one, spoke. "I'll take the narrow with her." Another soldier nodded, then another. The commander's face darkened, his control unraveling in plain sight. Torres, weak but unbroken, rasped from behind her. "Guess that makes it a vote." The canyon pulsed with the weight of it. And in that moment she knew, this wasn't about paths, not anymore. It was about who they chose to follow when death waited on both sides. Her heart pounded. She hadn't wanted command, she still didn't. But when Tor's hand squeezed hers, faint and trembling, she understood. Sometimes you don't choose leadership. It chooses you. The squad turned, waiting. The commander seethed. And in that silence, she made the choice that would define them all. We take the narrow. The canyon listened, the men obeyed. And as they moved, shadows stretching long behind them, she felt the commander's glare burn into her back. He wouldn't forgive. He wouldn't forget. And before this was over, he would strike again. Why did the narrow path feel wider than the canyon itself? Because every man knew what it meant. They weren't just walking into danger, they were walking into her choice. The stone pressed close on both sides, jagged and cruel, forcing them into single file. Their footsteps echoed too loud, their breaths too sharp. Even the wounded groans of Torres sounded like signals to waiting ears. She led them, not by command, not by rank, but because their boots fell in rhythm with hers, not the commander. Every step, she felt his eyes burning into her back. And yet the squad followed her. The air thickened as the canyon twisted tighter. Sunlight thinned. The shadows grew teeth. She could feel them, the enemy, unseen, waiting. Her palms sweated against the grip of her rifle. Every instinct screamed that this path, this choice, would demand blood before it gave freedom. She just prayed it wouldn't be Torres. Behind her, his breaths grew shallower, his weight heavier against Alvarez. But the boy didn't complain. His jaw clenched, his eyes hard, his steps steady. She wanted to tell him he didn't have to carry more than his share, but she knew words would only insult his resolve. So she kept walking. A faint click echoed, too faint for most, but not for her. Her body froze. Tripwire. Her eyes traced the line, thin and cruel, strung across the path. A crude trigger buried under loose rock. One wrong step and the canyon would bury them. Her breath caught, she raised a fist. The squad halted, confusion rippling through their silence. The commander's voice cut sharp. "Why are we stopping?" She pointed, wordless. The men's eyes widened as they saw. The commander scoffed, masking unease. "So what? Disarm it." Her jaw tightened. His words came too easy, too careless. And then she saw it. A second wire, and a third, layered, hidden. The canyon wasn't mined for chance. It was engineered to slaughter. Her gut twisted. They were expected. And in that realization, she felt the shadow of betrayal settle heavier than stone. The commander hadn't just marched them blind. He had marched them here. Her eyes locked on him. He didn't flinch. Didn't even pretend surprise. Her chest went cold. But before she could speak, before the truth could tear open, the ridges erupted. Gunfire, muzzle flashes stabbing the dark, bullets ricocheting off stone, sparks showering the squad. The canyon exploded with chaos. Men dove for cover, shouting, firing blind into the shadows. Torres collapsed against the rock, Alvarez shielding him with his own body. She hit the ground, heart pounding, rifle snapping to her shoulder. Her sights locked onto movement in the shadows. One squeeze, one enemy fell. But there were too many, too precise, too ready. This wasn't an ambush. It was an execution. The commander roared over the gunfire. "Return fire, hold the line." But his voice rang hollow. The men weren't looking at him anymore. They were looking at her. Waiting. Her breath steadied, her finger tightened. She didn't shout, she didn't command. She simply acted. Her shots were precise, cutting through the fire, carving space for the men to breathe. She pointed, gestured, shifted, and they moved with her. Not chaos, rhythm. For the first time, the canyon wasn't just survival. It was defiance. The commander saw it too. His face twisted, fury boiling over the edge. And then, in the middle of the storm, he did the unthinkable. He turned his rifle, not toward the ridges. Toward her. She felt it before she saw it. The silence of betrayal louder than the gunfire. Her chest heaved, time slowed. His finger curled on the trigger. And then Tor's voice split the air. "No." The boy lunged. weak, bleeding, half-dead, but faster than the commander expected. The shot cracked, Torres fell. Her world shattered. She caught him as he collapsed, his blood warm against her hands, his eyes wide with pain but steady with something stronger. "You lead them," he whispered. Her throat burned, tears blurred her sight. "Stay with me, please don't." His hand lifted, trembling, finding hers, squeezing once. Then nothing. Her breath broke, her chest hollowed. And in that hollow, something else filled. Rage. Not wild, not blind. Rage sharpened to a blade. She rose, rifle steady, eyes locked on the commander. The squad froze. The gunfire faded to background. The canyon narrowed to this moment. She spoke, voice low, shaking with fury and grief. "You don't get to take him. You don't get to take anyone else." The commander sneered, raising his rifle again. "Then take me." Her breath steadied. One squeeze. Silence. The canyon went still. The squad stared, stunned, not at the shot, not at the body crumpled against the stone. At her. At the choice she had made. Her hands trembled, not from recoil, from the weight of it. Torres, blood still warm on her fingers, the commander's lifeless eyes staring into nothing. Her chest heaved, she looked at the men, their faces pale, exhausted, broken, waiting for her. She swallowed hard, her voice was rough but steady. "We keep moving, not for me, not for him, for the ones who can't anymore." They nodded, not in unison, not in discipline, in belief. The canyon swallowed their footsteps as they carried Tor's body, each man heavier, each step harder. But they moved. Hours later, when the canyon finally opened to the valley, when the horizon stretched wide and endless, they collapsed in silence. The sun bled orange across the sky. The air tasted of freedom. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. She sat apart, Tor's tags clutched in her hand. The metal bit into her palm, anchoring her in grief. Her father's words echoed again. In war, silence kills more than bullets. She had spoken, she had acted, and men had lived. But the cost. Her throat tightened, tears stung her eyes. Sometimes leadership wasn't a prize. It was a debt you never stopped paying. The squad sat in the fading light, broken but breathing. No songs, no cheers, just silence. And in that silence, something lingered. Not glory, not triumph. Dignity. The kind that didn't need words. The kind that only acted when the moment demanded it. Her hand tightened on the tags, her breath steadied. And as the sun dipped, leaving the canyon in shadow, she whispered into the silence, not for them, but for herself. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. The words drifted, soft, carried by the dying wind. And for the first time since the war began, she let herself believe they might matter.